So I'm going to ask each Davis alum to introduce themselves, when they graduated from Milken, what they majored in at Davis, and then what you're up to now, just as kind of a starting point. And we'll start with Liat.
Hi, I'm Liat. I graduated from Milken in 2013, and then I graduated from Davis in 2017. I was a psychology major, and I did minors in education and human development. I have been working as a teacher for the past 4 years, and I'm going on to do my master's in occupational therapy.
Awesome. Where are you living? Where are you teaching?
I'm in LA currently. I'm teaching at my old elementary school, and then hopefully when the borders open, I'll be going to Australia to do my master's.
Amazing. Eliana, you're next on my screen.
Hey everyone, I'm Eliana Wasserman. It's nice to see Leah and Julia. So we were at Davis at the same time. I graduated Milken in 2014 and UC Davis in 2018. I majored in, it's called Community and Regional Development, and minored in psychology. And now I'm living in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I am working at a legal aid doing some intake work. So yeah, nice to see you all.
Great. Michelle, I'm sorry.
You had it. It's Michelle. Yeah.
Michelle, great. I was going to say Michael, and I'm like, it's not Michael.
I'm Michelle. I actually graduated from Milken in 2004. So I feel very old.
That's when I graduated from high school too.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's two of us. And I didn't go to Davis for undergrad. I went to Davis for graduate school. So I actually went to Pomona College for undergrad and graduated in 2008. And then I was at Davis actually for 6 years doing my PhD in economics. I was there from 2011 to 2017. And after that, I moved to Washington, D.C., where I've had a couple jobs, but now I'm an economist at the Federal Trade Commission. And I'm also, I also sometimes teach at American University.
That's great. Did you know Warren Doyle?
I did know Warren Doyle. We were buddies.
We went to high school together. I worked at Pomona admissions too before I was at Milken. So.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Small world.
Yeah, Warren yeah, that's great.
Yeah, Warren. He was voted, I think, best all around in our yearbook. He was a great guy. Anyway, that's an aside. Jules, your turn.
Hi, so I went to Milken and graduated in 2012, and then I went to UC Davis and graduated in 2016. I studied philosophy and religious studies, and at the time was pre-law, and then moved to Washington, D.C. also, actually, and worked in like foreign policy and government. Recently did a little pivot and have been working in marketing. I'm now studying to complete a master's at USC in communication management and marketing strategy, and I run my own digital content marketing firm.
Awesome. You guys are all doing very cool stuff. That's all really different, which I think speaks to the value of Davis in general. So Jonathan, if you want to make sure that you get certain questions answered, please unmute and stop me at any point. But I obviously can roll along with prompts as well. So I guess I wonder about the city of Davis and the experience of living in Davis in general. I think the UC has a great, people know they're going to get a good education, and it's more about the location that sometimes makes our students hesitant. So I guess I'll start with Michelle in terms of since you really were living in the city for a long time, and what quality of life, and was there stuff to do, and just what is Davis like? Yeah,
so I don't know if you've had a chance to visit, but Davis is a pretty small town, but it's, so I'll start with, I really liked my time at Davis. For me, as going in already in my late 20s, when I started, I was really looking for a place that I could live as an adult. And so I had to think about that as well when I was making my decision. I obviously grew up in California, and it was nice to come back to California. It's really close to the Bay Area. So it's not, it's far, it's kind of feels like a small town in the middle of nowhere, but it's actually not in the middle of nowhere. I really liked it. It's a really pretty place. It's really calm and there's not a lot going on, but I mean that in the best way. I think, and I was remembering kind of my undergraduate experience at Pomona College. It's kind of a similar kind of small town feel where there's kind of quiet, and I really liked that because as an undergrad, because all of the social life was happening on campus with fellow undergraduates. There's no like distractions of the big city or something like that. So it actually like was really fun as a college experience to have that, even though the town itself was a little bit less exciting. That being said, I mean, hiking and outdoor stuff, all that kind of stuff is pretty fun if you're into that. Yeah, I'll stop there, but I like my time there.
Jules, I saw you nodding the most emphatically, so we'll go to you next. And also, kind of what took up your time while you were an undergrad at Davis.
Yeah, I mean, not to be dramatic, but Davis is like my favorite city in the entire world. Like I could have stayed forever. Like I could genuinely still live there. It almost brings me to tears just visiting or entering Davis, just because I can't even put it into words. It's like the most special just place I've ever been. And I decided on going to Davis literally just from seeing the town. Like I just drove through the town and we just parked in the parking lot, like with my parents. We drove up from LA and I was like, okay, like I'm going here. They're like, it's nighttime. Like you didn't see anything. Like, what do you mean? And like, you just feel it. Like, it's just this really special vibe, best food ever, like amazing restaurants. And it's nice that it's so insular because you don't have, that kind of city thing, but you don't really need it. Like everybody kind of creates their own world there where it feels like there's so much to do. Like you don't realize you're in a small town. And I just think it's just such a wonderful experience coming from a city, like a major city. Like obviously we're all from LA. We all grew up in a major city. Like having that small town, very true college experience is so unique. And it's something that I really wanted. I didn't want to be in a major city. I didn't want to be in like New York or LA or San Francisco or something like that. It's accessible. Like I've been, spent time in Sacramento and the Bay, and I had like an internship in San Francisco, and like you can come and go. But really the community there makes you kind of like have no reason to leave. Especially Hillel. Like I know, Liat and Eliana and I were really involved with Hillel and like the Jewish pro-Israel community on campus, which, makes it really easy to make friends and meet other people in the Greek system. And, everyone just really creates their own community and world there. Like you really forget there's an outside world.
Eliana, Liat, do you want to add kind of any perspective to that, or do you feel like it's been covered?
I think, yeah, it's been covered so far, but just to echo, it's just a warm place. I mean, Julia and I talk about it at least once a week still, just how much we missed it. And there's just, everyone is so nice there. Everyone is so welcoming that you almost never want to leave. And I don't know, people from like Berkeley, UCLA, they always used to make fun of us for being like the cow town, that there's nothing to do there and all there is cows. But you really can make it what you want it to be. There's tons of things to do. If you join Greek life, that's always helpful. And Hillel, like Julia said. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to do, and it's just a great place. And it's a huge school. I mean, there's a lot of students, but somehow it still feels very small and comforting. So that's something that I really loved about it. I left Milken thinking I wanted to go to like a super small school. Never really even considered Davis until Mr. Mancuda was like, you know what? You should kind of give it a shot. I went without even, I think I toured the campus, didn't even pay attention to what was there, just because it wasn't like a dream school for me. I wasn't even really considering it. And kind of just took the advice of Mr. Mancuda and enrolled. So it was the best decision I've ever made. That's for sure.
And Elia, I mean, it's interesting you guys are all living back in big cities, but still look back on Davis so fondly. And I think of New Orleans as like so lively and great food, but Eliana still seems to think of Davis fondly, correct?
Yeah, well, New Orleans actually feels pretty small in a lot of ways. There's only 300,000 people here. So I think in a similar way, like with Davis, I loved the contrast of a big school in a small city. And I think here too, there's so much to get involved with, but like I run into people all the time because there's central places to be. And I think at Davis, it was similar. You know, there's the coffee house, there's Hillel, there's like the central hubs. And I think what is nice about that is that you feel camaraderie with people, even though it's a school of 30,000 people. You like really you're seeing your friends and even just people in classes so often. And I think it feels to me like the best of both worlds to like have so many opportunities to meet new people, try new things, and also like feel contained in a way that I feel like hearing about friends from other schools, it did feel kind of overwhelming, no matter the size of the school, to just be dropped in the middle of a city and to have to navigate that. And I think, yeah, what everyone said, there were really opportunities to like branch out and go beyond Davis, but I honestly didn't always feel the need because I was so engaged with what was happening.
And in terms of the transition from a place like Milken that is relatively smaller to a large school like Davis, what was that like? And how did you find community? Anyone can jump in, or I'll call on people, but I don't want it to feel like class.
I mean, I feel like the Jewish community is a great place to turn to. I know I definitely like wasn't totally sure how I'd meet people, and just through was a part of Greek life, and that helped a lot. But just knowing about Hillel and just kind of showing up there like by yourself isn't weird. And I made pretty much all of my closest friends there, which is pretty funny because like Liad and I both went to Milken and we never talked to each other at Milken, and we randomly met at Hillel, and she's my best friend, and we just like decided to be roommates, and like still 5 years later I talk to her every day. So it's kind of funny that we had to go all the way there to meet each other when we grew up like in the same city at the same school. But it's just easy to meet people because everyone, I think, because you're kind of stuck there in a way, like there isn't as many options, that you kind of have to meet people, and people are really social. Like you can go sit with anyone, you can talk to anybody. It's just a really social environment in a way similar to Milken, where you really get to know people well, and people are like really open. Because I transferred to Milken in 10th grade, so I didn't really know that many people, and it felt similar where I just kind of showed up and like people were nice to me. So it's similar that they have, and there's a really nice Jewish community there as well, which is a great way to meet people.
Class sizes. I think that's probably maybe one of the more overwhelming parts of being a freshman at a large school. Is what was it like being in a large lecture hall, and how did you find academic connection?
I can speak on that a little bit just because psychology is, I think, the biggest major at Davis. It has the most people in it. At first, it's overwhelming. I mean, you can go into a lecture hall of 300 people. But the nice thing about most of their classes is they have a big lecture and then small discussions where it's only 15 people in a class. So that kind of provides some consistency and also a way to get to know people in your class. And in your major, you kind of end up just seeing the same people over and over again. I was able to make a lot of friends just through classes, and I did an internship at the UC Davis Center for Mind and Brain. So I through like consistently going to different classes, you kind of just meet people. And I will say one thing about Davis is, and I felt the same going in, I mean, no one I knew from Milken was there. As Julia said, we didn't really talk to each other. So I went there with like absolutely by myself. I was the only person from my graduating class to go to Davis, which at first was a very like daunting task. I was really nervous, but everywhere you go, people are super friendly. You don't have to ever fear that someone's going to be rude or unkind. Everyone's just willing to kind of get to know the people around them. So that made it easier. And there was always that same feeling in the classroom too. In a lecture of 300 people, you could always find someone to sit next to who was willing to kind of get to know you and help you out.
Michelle, did you did you interact like TA classes or work with undergrads? Like what was that?
Yeah, I was frantically looking for my unmute button. I couldn't click on it fast enough. Yeah, I was just going to offer kind of a perspective from the other side. I was a TA. I was in economics PhD, which econ and psychology are probably like neck and neck in the biggest majors at Davis. And so I was a TA for some of the introductory classes and some of the advanced classes, and so I kind of got the other side of got to see things from the other side. And I taught a class as well. And I would say, yeah, it's a big lecture hall. I think stepping into that lecture hall for me was also kind of daunting when I was the TA. I was like, whoa, these are all my students now. But yeah, I think I think they do a pretty good job of splitting it up and having people having these discussion sections where you're really in a group of a smaller group. It feels like a normal class size that you might be used to it at Milken. And then office hours. As a TA, I would have office hours and nobody would show up. And the people who would show up, I would be able to kind of form a connection with them and kind of talk to them. And then if two people showed up to office hours, they would become buddies throughout the quarter. And so that was a good way to like do well in the class and also meet people. And some of the TAs, some of the students I got to know through TAs as a TA, were interested in economics, were interested in kind of opportunities, and some of them kind of got opportunities to do research with faculty and kind of, I have a student who I met through office hours who is now, doing her own PhD at Vanderbilt right now. So like, there's really opportunities to like, if you're willing to hustle a little bit to really kind of thrive, even if you enter the class size as huge.
Exactly what I was looking for. Eliana, I am interested in your favorite class that you took at Davis, especially if it wasn't related to your major, but an academic experience that was memorable. And obviously anyone else, I'm interested in that too.
Yeah, that's a great question. I might have to think even more on that one, but
Great.
Yeah, so maybe come back to me if that's okay.
All right. Favorite class that you took, or a class you were surprised that you like while taking it for Gen Ed? And Michelle, tips for undergrads for Jonathan as he starts and has those TAs and is in the large lecture halls, aside from going to office hours, which I feel like is always number one. But yeah, any academic insight and things that were memorable about kind of classroom experience and faculty interaction.
I guess just to answer you directly, I think I'll just reiterate that I think that even though the class sizes are, at least from my experience in the economics department, I don't know how the other departments were, but from my experience, like I think people can be maybe a little scared off by, there's 300 people in my class and there's no way that like the TAs or the professor cares what's going on with me. But if everybody feels that way and nobody does anything about it, the TAs and the professor are actually kind of lonely at the end of the day, and they don't really actually have an opportunity to meet any of the undergraduate students. And they often have opportunities, funding for, through grants where they have, maybe research opportunities or kind of interesting kind of like work opportunities or just like time to chat. I think if you really kind of put it into your head that like everybody else thinks these people are busy and overworked, but sometimes they're not, and you can really get a lot out of it. And I saw a few students really take advantage without much like competition, to be honest, even though the classes were huge.
Yeah, I'll just emphasize also
go ahead.
the importance of getting to know your professors and faculty. Most people, when they leave a lecture, they kind of just walk out and you're kind of left there on your own. I ended up having a professor she was my professor, I think my first quarter of sophomore year. And I ended up interning for her for the next like 2.5 years in her research lab. And I ended up doing a honors research project with her. And I still keep in very close contact with her. And she actually was able to write recommendations for graduate school as well. So I think, yeah, getting to know your professors and your TA is a great way to learn about opportunities, both academic opportunities and just kind of to get to know people who are involved in the community as well.
One thing I was thinking about too was maybe not necessarily that it was my favorite class, but I think even how I found out about my major was kind of a unique experience in that there was something called the Residence Hall Advising Team, and it would be people who are more experienced in academic requirements would come to the dorms and present on different academic programs and experiences. And I just heard about this major that I had never heard of called Community and Regional Development. And I was then able to take a class pretty early on and then shift my major because I loved it so much. And I think it also goes to show that, you know, a lot of students go into college and don't really know what they're looking for. And the I think opportunity of a big school is that you're going to have pretty established majors, but then you're also going to have a lot of unique majors that cater to different interests, and then can take classes like, you know, intro to animal science or tractor driving or beer making. I think UC Davis also like has some pretty unique classes for being an ag school. And so I think that was exciting too, to get to feel like, oh, I don't have to be bound to my major or to a small set of interests because there's just so much to explore.
Did you take tractor driving? No.
Sadly did not. I didn't plan my time well enough, but everyone who did loved it. So yeah.
When we, Milken did a college tour a couple of years ago and we visited Davis and we parked right in front of like the wine school. And it's great. Ag schools don't get enough credit. Jonathan, what are you interested in studying, if you know, so we can kind of tailor this to you too?
So I'm leaning more towards STEM, like science research, and considering something in engineering, maybe like chemical engineering or like biomedical engineering and stuff. But like, yeah, science mainly.
Do you have any, because I'm sure these people have friends who are in STEM and have gone on to live lives and have jobs. So is there anything specific that you were hoping to gain, or is kind of general helpful in terms of professor accessibility and things like that?
I think generally, yeah, like professor accessibility, and also just like if Davis is like the right school to go for STEM, you know what I mean?
I think it's definitely the right school to go for STEM. I didn't study STEM, but I was actually a tour guide when I was at Davis. So I talked a lot to like prospective students and toured them around the school. So I had to memorize a lot of stuff about STEM, even though I studied philosophy, which was like the absolute opposite. And I was definitely in the minority. Like most people were studying STEM. The STEM libraries and like all those facilities were 30,000 times nicer than like the liberal arts kind of stuff. Like all those buildings were super nice. I used to study in the like engineering library because it was just nicer. So I feel like Davis is definitely a good choice for those majors. There's a lot of opportunities. I know that people are really well connected there. So for like internships and stuff like that, from my experience, like the Career and Internship Center seemed to have more information on that. So when I was asking about like pre-law and like government and like that kind of stuff, they didn't really know as much, whereas they definitely, it sounds like we're more helpful to my friends who are studying STEM. So I think it's definitely, I mean, like the majority of people are in STEM, I think, because obviously animal science is like a huge one, and, you know, just most of the majors are STEM. So I think it's definitely a good choice for that.
I would add that I think Davis is definitely the place you want to be if you want to be an engineer. I think it's definitely the entire university seems geared towards. Geared towards the STEM the STEM fields. Just the facilities. I kind of felt a little bit like a second-class citizen as a social scientist. I would also say that the particular types of STEM that Davis specializes in, the agricultural and all the kind of resource and environmental stuff, I think is a pretty exciting place to be right now. I think it's an area where there's going to be a lot of opportunities for employment after college, and just like a really exciting, if you take STEM as like a big field and you focus in on what Davis is really good at, that is kind of like where it's at right now. And on top of that, you're in the Bay Area. So you have all the connections to like, nearby Silicon Valley and all that stuff. So I think I think if I wanted to be an engineer, if I wanted to be a scientist of any kind, I would rank Davis like really high.
Two other little engineering things to add. I had my predominant friend group junior and senior year were all engineers. So I feel like I have a good sense of that too. And I would say a couple things. One, I know it's pretty easy to double with engineering because the overlap isn't as strict as other colleges. And so a lot of my friends doubled in a couple different engineering majors. If anyone knows something different, feel free to jump in. But that was my understanding. And my roommate actually got to know her professor really well, and she wanted to do aerospace and ended up actually working at NASA for about a year. And so there really are ways to get some pretty amazing experiences, both I think in college and after. It's just important to seek out those relationships with professors and grad students, because there are so many students that you want to, work to build those relationships.
What were the things that you guys, I'm so sorry if I already asked this. What were the things that you guys got really involved in as undergraduates? Like what took up your time? I know there was some Hillel in there in Greek life, but in terms of things on campus or off campus, what would you say were the things that defined your experience there? Start with Liat, because she is next in my rotation.
What took up most of my time was a lot of research. I spent 2.5 years working in an infant cognition lab. So I worked there 10 hours a week for 2.5 years. And I worked on an independent study with the professor that I just met after I took her class. I'd say that took up most of my time, but the nice thing is there was never like stress trying to balance like a job and also school. I know a lot of people who were able to work and balance their classes. So that was great. And I mean, just like enjoying the farmers markets on the weekends and hanging out in the quad on a sunny day. And I think it's a very social place and a relaxing. There's a lot of like time to relax and to actually enjoy yourself. I would say it is pretty like academically rigorous, but there's a good balance and time to actually enjoy yourself and kind of take time to relax a little bit.
Also important. Jules, what about you?
Yeah, I was pretty involved. I worked as a tour guide. I was really involved in student government. So I was in several different units of student government. One of them was centered around like lobbying. So we'd go to Sacramento and like lobby on bills on behalf of the university on like bills about like higher education funding and stuff like that. I was also on like a commission that voted on bills. So I did that. I worked at Hillel, so I was really involved there. And then I was also the president of the pro-Israel group. So I was really involved in Aggies for Israel for several years. And I was in a sorority, which is, I guess, how I sort of met Liat again also. So there's definitely a lot of ways to be involved. I did a lot of different things. But it's a great way to meet other people. There's so many things to be involved in. Student government's really fun. There's people of all different types of majors and backgrounds and kind of roles for people with different interests. And it's a great way to meet people. And Hillel as well, like even just going every Friday for Shabbat was really fun to just see your friends and like sit together and hang out. And then we'd like go out after together. And there's really a lot of ways. Like there's really a club or something for everybody.
Eliana, do you want to add?
Sure. I did a lot with peer advising, which I really enjoyed, getting to learn about other majors, work with other students. It definitely was a great way to see a different side of campus, I would say. And yeah, in addition to Hillel, I definitely did a lot of activism outside of that, which I enjoyed, and getting to build coalitions with other groups working on, other things within the school was pretty cool to see and to be a part of. And I think volunteering is a big thing that I did. And I guess I would encourage anybody watching this, as well as you, Jonathan, that I think there's both pros in like sticking with a few things, and there's a lot of opportunities to try a bunch of things. And one year I did research, and then one year I volunteered at the LGBT Center, and then one year I was in the environmental club. Like, I had just so many interests that I wanted to explore, and I was grateful that I both had a few really solid homes, I would say, with Jewish worlds, with activism worlds, with my different jobs that I had, and also just got to experience a lot with classes and clubs. And honestly, was so busy. I don't really know when I did school, but somehow I fit it in.
And in terms, Leon, I liked what you said about balancing, like you can work and there is balance, and, it's rigorous, but it's not, going to take over your life. And I think that's an important thing to think about, Jonathan and other viewers. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, when you were a senior in high school, what would that piece of advice be? It doesn't have to be Davis related. This is really just in general. Whoever thinks of it first can unmute. I know it's deep. Or Jonathan, if you're looking for wisdom in a specific area, these are the people.
I think I would tell myself to just really keep an open mind, because I also, I wasn't like, oh my God, Davis is my dream school, I'm going to Davis. And looking back, it was the best decision I ever made. I would make that decision 1,000 times more. I would recommend it to every person. I would shout it from the rooftops, Davis is the best place ever. Maybe not for everybody, but I think there really is somewhere for everyone on that campus if you want to make it your home and find, something there. And I think going in with an open mind and just saying yes. I remember before I got there telling myself, whatever opportunity comes, I'm going to say yes, even if it's not really my thing, or it's just, an excuse to meet people. You never know what's going to happen. So just really going in open-minded, saying yes, exploring different options. I think I went in kind of dead set, career-wise on what I thought I wanted, and then ended up not being what I wanted. I pursued it, and then I got a job in it after college, and I didn't like it. And then I realized, I think I was pushing myself in this route because I thought I had to be there, or it's what made sense, that I should be doing that. And then I was able to really pivot and think more critically about who I am and what I like and what environment I want to be in. So I think that taught me a lot, and that wasn't an easy situation. So I think, if I could go back and tell myself that, you never know, just kind of enjoy where you are and do what really speaks to you, not what you think you have to do or what you're doing because there's pressure or whatever, or you feel you need to. Just really kind of be yourself and follow, what you feel is right for you. And if you make a mistake, it's never too late. You can always, pivot your career or try something else, or change your major, or make more friends, or transfer, whatever you need to do. So that's something I wish I had told myself, because I think I was really dead set on this being my path, this is it. And I didn't really realize that that wasn't really what I wanted.
I think that's a really good point. I would say something pretty similar, which is that, and yeah, just from I had a kind of similar experience of being oh, Davis, I don't know, and not really getting a chance really to visit too much, and yeah, just kind of rolling the dice. And basically everybody I've met on the, who are kind of on the other end of having gone to Davis kind of has a similar reaction when they say, oh, Davis is actually a great place. I haven't met anybody who's Davis really sucked. And I would say that the advice I would give is kind of similar to what you were saying, which is that I think you should, it should be a place you want to live for 4 years, and kind of where you think you would enjoy. But I think another thing that's important, kind of focusing on kind of the end of college and what college kind of gives you is what are the opportunities that you might be able to find, in whatever college or university you choose, and what are the kind of the people, what people have talked about just today, the internships and the connections and the clubs and all that. Like what are the kind of opportunities, either professional or social, that can kind of like push you forward as you leave Davis, as you live this kind of like little paradise, and go off to the real world. I think that's really important to kind of think about. And it's hard to do that when you're still in high school because you don't really know. But I think the more you can kind of get a sense of what that's like for people who've graduated, I think that's really important.
Liat, Eliana?
Everything that's been said is perfect. Yeah, just to, I guess, just like really dive into it and say yes to a lot of opportunities. And also one of my favorite things was just meeting new people. Milken is such like a small school, and a lot of us grew up kind of in a similar way. I would say, yeah, be willing to meet new people from different backgrounds, different cultures. You could meet people from all over the world at Davis. So I would say that's also a big piece of advice, is to just be open and be willing to get to know other people, and to definitely push yourself out of your comfort zone, because I think a lot of growth happens when you do that. So that would be my advice.
Cool.
We've got a smart group here, hard to follow, but again, echoing what everyone has said. And I think too, maybe a different way to reframe, but similar premise, being that there's so much to learn about yourself and about the world outside of the classroom. And I think that although academics are so important, and you're in college, for some, or primarily to get, an education, but the education is also about like, how am I as a human, and what kinds of friendships do I want, and what values are important to me, and how can I spend my time as a human when I'm not working or studying. And I think that that's where so many of the most like beautiful moments of learning and growth happen, and also really complement a lot of the time what you're learning in school. And so I think it's not that one or the other is more important, but Davis really provides a way to be a good student, and to also just like have a really fulfilling life and college experience.
Beautiful. All right, Jonathan, do you have any other questions that you would like to ask, or that you think your peers might be interested in hearing? Because I did look at the list of our admitted students, and I'm going to be sending this chat to a lot of mine.
I guess like the last thing would be Davis in comparison to like other UCs. Like what's the selling point of Davis, I guess, above the others?
Asking tough questions.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I did Model UN at Milken, so I went to Berkeley like every year for a Model UN competition. I remember being like, wow, like I love Berkeley. I would totally want to go to Berkeley. And then when I visited it and like spoke with other Milken alumni versus Davis, it just had a very different vibe. I feel like the community at Davis is just unparalleled. Like it's just such a unique, special community that the other UCs have this sort of like, it felt like almost more competitive. Like it had kind of like a cutthroat sort of vibe. And it just didn't feel as like nurturing in that same way. It doesn't feel like a community because it's in, LA or Berkeley or like these major cities. And it just has this very like small town sort of, I mean, we've touched on it, but like community that just feels really different than the other UCs. And that's really why I picked it. I mean, I got into other schools that may have been more competitive, like rankings wise, I guess, but it just didn't feel right. Like it just didn't feel like me. Like I just kind of stepped on campus and I was like, I'm fully myself. Like this is it. which is like a weird feeling to have when you're 18, but I feel like, you know, it's just such a unique community. I felt really supported, like in all my classes were very like discussion oriented because it was philosophy. So it wasn't really the big lecture hall environment. And I felt like I could speak up and say anything I wanted, and people were going to like support me and be nice and like, you know, and it was just, it's really just such a special community that I feel like the other schools, because they're either in a major city or they have that kind of like competitive rankings sort of like thing to uphold, that it just didn't feel as nurturing, and it didn't feel as like collegey, like as campus. Like I just wanted to be in a small town, because when else, like I had a feeling that I would probably always live in a major city. I grew up in a major city, and it sort of felt like my one time to be somewhere a little bit like random or like rural or like different, which I'm thankful for, because after I graduated, like a week later, I moved to Washington, D.C., and then I moved back to LA. And coming from Davis to DC was like a really shocking difference. So I'm just grateful that I had that, because I think that's a time in your life where like it's just nice to have that support and that community and feel like you can talk to anybody, and you can, and it's also safe. Like I could walk home at night by myself and like, you know, just feel really comfortable.
I would say another thing, just comparing to the other UCs, I think over the past, so I applied to college in 2003 or something, and I don't think Davis was on my radar, but I think if I was applying now, it would be. I think it's gotten like relative to the other UCs, just climbing. I saw that through my 6 years there, and just like the investments they were able to kind of weather a lot of the like, you know, California economy really well compared to the other UCs. So like the resources they have are maybe better than the other, you know, they've been able to survive some of that a little bit, which is maybe maybe not something you're particularly worried about, but it kind of like, it's definitely on the rise. It's kind of, it's trending in the right way, which I think is important too. I think it feels like it's like, what's the word? Kind of, it doesn't feel like decrepit, you know what I mean? Which sometimes the other UCs might. Yeah. I think, and I would just echo what Jules said also. I think I look back on my 4 years in college, I kind of went to a similar and kind of vibe of a college. And it's just like, you don't really get that many opportunities to just live in a small place where the college is the center of the city or town, and where like all you have to do is study and hang out with your friends on a lawn, like that. You're never going to get that again. So you just, if you can get that opportunity, you should take it.
I think can I say mine too. I grew up in LA. We undervalue simplicity and the beauty of fewer like options. Like some of the happiest people choose from the smallest number of options. And I mean smallest number of options of like restaurants, what to do on the weekend. Like more is not always better, and bigger is not always better. And I think Davis represents this perfect harmony of a big UC, but without a lot of the hoopla of a big UC, I guess. I don't know that hoopla is the right word, but yeah. And I think what all of these alums said about STEM and the resources and the availability of the people that are there to support you, and the proximity to what is larger, where there is a lot of choice and there is, you know, choice overload, I think is really invaluable. Great. Well, this has been a lovely, Eliana, go ahead.
Sure. Just to add to that
Yeah,
part,
of course.
something I heard, again, this is not my experience, but that people really felt in STEM that there was collaboration and like camaraderie in a way that, from what I've heard about other UCs, it did feel a lot more competitive. And I think, you know, ultimately, yes, you do want to do well and make sure that you individually are succeeding. But I think just the vibe of like, we're here to like help each other, not we're here to like, you know, step on each other, I think is just such an important thing when school is so hard and life is hard. And to just feel like, oh, I like have people who have my back is so important. And I think something that someone said to me that I do think is true is like at other UCs, people are looking down and they're sad because it's overwhelming, but you see happiness and joy at Davis that like I can't totally describe, but like I'll never forget my tour. Like or not everyone, but there was just a happiness that I really didn't necessarily feel in quite the same way with some of the other UCs. And just one other point about transportation, I did not have a car. I didn't want to have a car. And I think in the similar way of having less choices, I think being mobile, whether that was with a bike or the bus or just walking, I think knowing that everything was so close to me felt really comforting and safe and easy. And I did think made me feel less overwhelmed because it did feel more contained in a helpful way.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all so much for your time, and Jonathan for being here. I'm sure if other students have questions, I'm likely to put them in touch with one of the four of you, Jonathan especially. If you have follow-up questions for any of these people, we can put you guys in touch. But thank you so much for sharing your perspective. I am going to send this to my other students, so shout out to them. And yeah, I'm sure Mr. Mancuda is probably going to be in touch about other opportunities too. And I just am so grateful to you guys as Milken alums. So enjoy the rest of your night. And Jonathan, good luck with your decision.
Thank you so much.